Hey everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Urban Tumbleweed. This will just be a quickie of an episode since I'm really just focusing on establishing a baseline understanding with everyone. But I am so excited to jump into so many different topics regarding sustainability. But the first of anything is kind of nerve-wracking. You build up this idea in your head that whatever you end up going for first needs to be this really in-depth and complex discussion to show how much you know and to give the listeners an idea of all the rad stuff that you'll be talking about later on. But having never done anything like this before, it's scary to jump into head first, and tackling some enormous topic off the bat it's overwhelming for everyone involved. It's kind of like a first kiss. Stay with me. It just needs to be simple, and you've just got to do it to realize it's not actually this big, overwhelming thing that you've made it out to be. So, with that being said, this week, as my first kiss episode, I wanted to focus on defining what exactly sustainability is. It may seem straightforward, but I've really come to learn that there are a lot of nuances to the scope of sustainability, and understanding its reach and impact are really critical in reframing how we approach it. And as a quick disclaimer, the content in this episode and future episodes will be both a combination of information cited by credible sources and then my own opinion. And all the sources I pull from will be linked in the show notes. I'm also going to apologize in advance for the sheer number of times I will be saying the word sustainability. I would say make it into a drinking game, but that would be wildly irresponsible of me, so I will not condone it, but to each their own. But with that, let's get started. So, what is the definition of sustainability? According to the EPA, sustainability is based on a simple principle. Everything that we need for our survival and well-being depends on, either directly or indirectly, our natural environment. To pursue sustainability is to create and maintain the conditions under which humans and nature can exist in productive harmony to support present and future generations. End quote. Kind of vague and up for interpretation depending on what you define well-being, support, and natural as. And to me, sustainability is all-encompassing of all resources. This includes natural resources and human resources, which can be further broken down into subcategories like community resources, mental, emotional, physical resources, cultural resources, land and mineral usage, water and air usage, etc. And I group these into the scope of sustainability because every sector is vital to the world operating and thriving as a whole. Without any of those groups, the world would just not be able to function, and society as we know it would cease. And I think that understanding is a slightly stretched version of the EPA's definition. But the EPA did do a good job of including the actual scope of sustainability with the line, "To pursue sustainability is to create and maintain the conditions under which humans and nature can exist in productive harmony to support present and future generations." This expanded scope is critical to keep in mind as we continue to discuss what society currently considers sustainability to be. Because when looking at corporate sustainability, for example, a majority of that focus is placed solely on environmental sustainability, which, do not get me wrong, is an amazing feat to tackle, and I'm just generally glad that being green has become more or less a norm for large companies to incorporate into their business plan, and it's a huge step forward from where we were even just 10 years ago, but there is still a long, long way to go. And like I just mentioned, sustainability covers so much more than just the environment. It includes human sustainability, which can come in the form of workers' rights or social responsibility. It covers community sustainability, which can include reinvestment of resources into the very communities that help operate these enormous companies, or even just natural resource management, so on and so forth. And by narrowing our definition of sustainability to only cover surface level environmental issues and growing complacent with corporations and governments doing the literal bare minimum within this narrow scope, we're really just doing an injustice to ourselves and our communities and our planet, honestly. And that's the exact reason why understanding that the scope of sustainability is so much more than what we've just grown used to. To further dive into our current perception of sustainability, there is, in my opinion, a disproportionate amount of focus on individual efforts as opposed to the quote-unquote big actors in the fight of sustainability. And at the same time, there's not nearly enough of a focus on how impactful collective efforts are. Because when just looking at my individual efforts to be a more sustainable and socially responsible person, it's so easy to rationalize that what I do makes no difference whatsoever. I'm literally a speck of dust on this planet of 7 billion people. Billion. And yet the current messaging around sustainability and how responsible each individual person's efforts are make it seem like if I use a plastic bag, might as well just go out and club a baby seal, because that's how important and dramatic of a difference I make. Which is not necessarily bad messaging. It is important that everyone do their part, but it's overwhelming as a message, and guilting people into being sustainable is, ironically enough, not sustainable. But to go away from the baby seal and to go back to my point of being a speck of dust, well, it might seem like what I do as an individual isn't necessarily meaningful in the grand scheme of things. My contribution to the collective effort of all 7 billion specks of dust is extremely impactful. You know, you wouldn't notice a little bit of dust in the air, but you sure as hell would notice a dust storm. And that's where, you know, the focus of collective effort comes in. And I'll definitely dive deep more so into the psychology of individualism versus collectivism and how that impacts sustainability in another episode. But for now, brief on why this is important. By actively choosing to make more sustainable decisions in your everyday life, you're creating a habit and a ripple effect. And if you think to yourself, what difference could I possibly make as one person? And then choose to not even partake in sustainable practices for this very reason, think of all the other people that have that same mentality. And then therefore, they also choose not to partake in sustainable practices. Because collective effort goes both ways. And by choosing to engage despite that initial feeling of not making a difference, you are helping tilt the collective effort in favor of sustainability. And that's why it's so important to advocate for sustainability and to not let perfection be the enemy of good. Again, perfection being the enemy of good is something that I will reference a multitude of times, and it's another topic for another episode. I got so excited about this podcast that I filled out literal pages of ideas for future episodes, so definitely more to come. But back to the point of sustainability and big actors. In recent years, you know, there's been a lot more noise around corporations and governments doing their part, and rightfully so. Corporations utilize every aspect of sustainability within its full scope. It's got land usage, natural resource usage, human labor usage, community infringement, etc., etc. And it's all to a greater degree than their average consumers. And yet, there has only recently been a big push for corporations to start doing their part. And even then, it's a very small part. I think the best/most memorable instance that highlighted this disproportionate focus for me was the gas company Shell tweeted, "What are you willing to change to help reduce emissions? #energy debate." I hope that irony is not lost on you all, but I died when I saw this tweet. Yes, let me tell the non-renewable resource company what I, as an individual consumer, is willing to do, as opposed to focus on what you all, as a company, should be doing. Thankfully, 8 hours after this tweet, they did let the Twitter public know that they would be reshaping their product portfolio in the coming decades, as in multiples of 10 years. Little to no transparency on the actual changes they would be making, but again, a discussion for another time. I will genuinely just think about this tweet from time to time in my daily life, and it's been well over a year since this happened. But corporate sustainability is what I am specializing in my master's program, so once again, we'll really dig into the ins and outs of that topic in a future episode, because I can't give you all the good stuff on the first date, but more on that. But to close out with some actual more information, I did want to cover the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. These do an excellent job of really showcasing how intertwined sustainability is in our everyday lives and how we can improve as a society in this regard. According to the UN's official site, quote, "The Sustainable Development Goals are the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. They address the global challenges we face, including those related to poverty, inequality, climate change, environmental degradation, peace, and justice. The 17 goals are all interconnected, and in order to leave no one behind, it is important that we achieve all of them by 2030. Notice how all the challenges they called out relating to sustainability. They are more than just environmental. But the goals are, 1, no poverty, which is just an enormous goal, and we'll talk more about that in a second, but no poverty, 0 hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent worth and economic growth, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnership for the goals." That's a super hefty list, and a very vague list with only 8 years left. It's a lot. But the thing that's important is that there are goal outlines that are published for the world to see. And we have the opportunity as a collection of individuals to make a radical impact on the world through this expanded understanding of sustainability. I'm hesitant to call these actual goals since there aren't concrete metrics to measure success or degree to completion, but they are excellent themes to base goals off of. But I think a really consistent theme with everything that I just listed out from the UN's SDGs is that they're all very vague and very noble. And it's awesome that those are things that we as a collective society would like to work towards, but it's nearly impossible to do so without any micro goals within those. Like, you need metrics, you need to understand what we need to do as societies with more resources versus those with fewer resources, or even just a different set of resources. There's so many nuances that go into the SDGs, and that, I think, is a huge reason why we are nowhere near achieving any of these, quite frankly, as the world. We are very far away from them, which is sad, but also at the same time, we still have time left, and it's been really great to see people become more excited about achieving these goals, about being more sustainable in more ways than just environmental. And of course, also being sustainable in an environmentally conscious way. Love that. But, I know that was a lot of information, and that was genuinely scratching the surface, just topic touching and setting a baseline for what we're really going to deep dive and talk about in future episodes. And it was mostly just me alluding to future episodes, so sorry about that. But I do really hope that you all enjoyed this episode in defining sustainability. And just as a quick recap to everything that I mentioned, sustainability is environmental, human, cultural, And approaching challenges we face with this expanded understanding of sustainability is important for future and continued success. And this is coming from both me researching sustainability, learning about it in a academic and just a for fun interest way. And I'm a regular person just trying my best. And I would love to hear any feedback that you all have regarding opinions or topics, and I would love to hear any ideas or suggestions that you have for future episodes, because when it comes to sustainability and learning about it and defining it, it's ever changing, and what's important is getting everyone on board to having a baseline understanding and going from there. So I'm glad that you all tuned in. Hopefully this helped define sustainability a little bit more for you, and I hope you're all excited for at least one of the many future episodes I alluded to. But with that, thanks for listening. I'll see you all soon. Stay rad.